Sabek Ches Amud Aleph. We're starting from Yekari Breish Agag. Yekari Breish Agag. And it's about 10 lines. Okay. It says if someone was reading a scroll on the roof and it rolled down, didn't reach 10 tefachim, then you can still pull it back up. But if it did reach 10 tefachim from the ground, if it went within 10 tefachim, then instead of pulling it back up onto the print, the written side, you put that face downward. So the Gemara asks, when we shari, are you allowed to put it face down?
I'm trying to picture this situation. He's sitting on the edge of his roof, which is Reshus HaYachid, and it rolls down into the Reshus HaRabim. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, is this saying if he should let it go, which is just letting more go into the Reshus HaRabim? Because he's still holding some of it in his hand.
He's still holding the edge, the end of it.
So part of the scroll is in the Reshus HaRabim and part of it is in the Reshus HaYachid.
Right.
And it's saying let it go, so he's violating, he's purposely sending more from one Reshus to another, right?
1 second, it's breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's from my side or from your side. He's purposely what?
He's now holding the scroll. Part of it's in his Reshus HaRabim and part in the Reshus HaYachid.
Right.
And the H is to let it go, drop it.
No, not to let it go. The H is because it went so close to the ground, it's now Reshus HaRabim. So now just turn it over. Turn it over and let the written side be facing the wall. So it shouldn't be exposed to the air.
Okay, thank you.
So the Gemara asks, Umi Shari, is such a thing permissible? People that write Svarim, Sifrei Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzahs, and they should not turn it over face downward to protect it. They should put a cloth over it to protect it. And here you're saying that you can turn it over. The Gemara says, so it's possible to do it. Here, he doesn't have cloth available outside his house that he's able to cover it over like that. So best, even though it's not the best option, it's not the ideal option, but we do what's second best. Okay.
On second thought, could you put the microphone in? The sound is not good. Thank you.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. So what I need to do here is Okay. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
So this is what we're holding. It could be saying Kisvia Kodesh today. So we're going to do what's second best. If you don't turn it over, then it's going to be the Zayin of Kisvia Kodesh because it's going to be exposed throughout Shabbos, hanging out of the window. So it's better to turn it over. It shouldn't be exposed, even though you're not using a cloth. What do they say? People read a book, so they put it face down, but you're not supposed to do that with Svarim. Okay. Here we say that if it didn't reach within 10, if it didn't reach within 10 tefachim of the ground, then you can pull it back up. But if it did reach within 10 tefachim of the ground, then you turn it over. The Gemara asks, what's the problem? It didn't reach the ground. It's not resting on anything. Why can't you just pull it up? There's no isser over there to take it back in. There's not even an isser derabana. It never came to rest on anything. It's just hanging in the air. Rava says we're dealing with a case where the wall is slanted, and therefore if it's within 10 tefachim of the ground, it is resting on the slanted wall. So once it's resting, then you lift it off. It's going to be an akira. You're taking it off that, and that's mamish within Rosh Hashanah because it's within 10 tefachim of the ground. Gemara says, Amalei Abaya. Abaya says to Rava, how are you establishing our Mishnah that we're dealing with? That there's a slanted wall, and the scroll is rolling down the wall, and it's within 10 tefachim of the ground. Let's go a little further. Rabbi Yehuda says, he says that even if it's within 10 tefachim, you can still pull it back up, as long as it didn't mamish touch the floor. So it's not touching the ground, it's touching the wall within 10 tefachim of the ground, which means it's resting on something that's under 10 tefachim. It came to a rest. No, we're not. Our problem isn't the Gog. The Gog, he's on the Gog. The problem is the scroll. Is the scroll dangling or is the scroll resting? If it's resting, then there's a problem to take it off. You're making an akira from the Rosh Hashanah. If it's just dangling, so then there's no problem. Pull it back. So we answered that it's not dangling because it's resting on the slanted wall. So the Gemara says, okay, if you're dealing with the slanted wall, then what's the pshat in Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda says that if it's not touching the ground, he drops the 10 tefachim issue. He says if it's not touching the ground, then you're allowed to pull it back up. What's the pshat? Why are you allowed to pull it back up? But it's resting on the wall. You lose the whole Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was saying that I don't care how low it is, if it's still dangling, so then you can always pull it back up. But now you just got rid of that by saying that the wall is slanted. The Gemara answers, the Mishnah is missing words, and this is how it has to be read. When do we say that you have to turn it over because it's within 10 tefachim? That's talking about if the wall is slanted. But if it's not slanted, we claim over here that once it's within 3 tefachim of the ground, according to the Rabbanan, is what we're saying, then it's considered loved, it's considered attached to the ground. But if it's above 3 tefachim, then it's still considered dangling, it's not considered resting. And Rabbi Yehuda says that it has to be mamish on the ground, not halachically on the ground, but on the ground mamish. Rabbi Yehuda says Afilu ena masilik min aretz chulu. Even if it's not removed from the ground, except for one hair's breadth, right? It's still considered dangling. You're allowed to pull it back up. Why? Because it has to be resting on the ground. Okay, now we're going to quote a statement from Rava. It's going to create a little bit of an issue. It says, "Velahadam Rava teich shleisha l'Rabbanan tzarech hanacha leimichet hanayam l'shmaiti." It's machlekes the Rabbanan and Rabbi Akiva regarding kluta kamisha huncha. We had this in the beginning of Masechta Shabbos. If you throw something from a Rishus Yachid to another Rishus Yachid through Rishus Rabbim, or the opposite, you throw it through a house, right? So Rabbi Akiva said, "Kluta kamisha hancha." Anything that flies over another area, it's as if it rested in that area, and it's a violation of Hilchos Shabbos. Yeah, Dr. Stein, you're being quoted here. So, that's right. That's I don't think the Gemara said that, but that was a question that we mentioned. So the Rabbanan argue on Rabbi Akiva, and the Rabbanan say that we don't say kluta kamisha hancha. So what happens if you throw it within 3 tfachim of the ground? What about then? Because then 3 tfachim of the ground is considered part of the ground. So it goes like this. Rava says, "Toich shleisha l'Rabbanan tzarech hanacha." Even within 3 tfachim, it still needs to rest. It's not enough that it's toich shleisha from the ground. The Rabbanan don't even say if it's toich shleisha that it's considered kluta kamisha hancha. It needs to mamish rest on something practically, not halachically resting. So what's coming out of it here is that statement of Rava only fits with Rabbi Yehuda, who says that it needs to mamish rest. But according to the Rabbanan, by us, it's considered resting if it's within 3 tvachim. The Gemara says, so we're asking, maybe Rava only said it according to one opinion. When he said that, he would only follow Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to redo the whole Mishnah. It goes like this. The whole Mishnah is going to be Rabbi Yehuda. It says, when do we say that you can pull it, that if it's within 10 tfachim, it's considered on the ground? That's b'kaisel mushba. Aval b'kaisel she'ena mushba. But if it's not a slanted wall, if it's a regular straight wall and the scroll is dangling, afilu pachas mishleisha tfachim geilayatzli. Even if it's within 3 tfachim, you can still pull it back. That's where we switched to. Before we were saying that within 3 tfachim you can't. Now it's even if it's within 3 tfachim, you can still pull it back. Share Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, because Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is afilu eina mesulek menartz ela malayachot geilayatzli. Even if it's only within one hair's a string, the width of a string within from the dangling to the ground, you can still pull it back. My timer to be in nanachal gabi mashu, mamish needs to be touching the ground. Right. Yeah. What's the pshat? What's the pshat? We just redid the whole Mishnah.
Yeah, completely.
It's unclear what Chasuri Mechsra Vachiktani is doing. Some want to say that it's not really Rebbe. It's not really Rebbe the Anasi that would do this. What we're doing is, what we're trying to do is, we want to keep the Mishnah as it is. We also want to have the halacha included in the Mishnah. So we're saying let's read the Mishnah this new way with the halacha. Others say no, this is actually Rabbi Anasi didn't fix it perfectly. He left it like this because even though he was allowed to write the Mishnah, But really, the oral Torah wasn't supposed to be written. So he wrote it down in a way that it needs still a oral commentary that comes along with it. Okay. Ziz shalifnei chalain. This is a ledge, a little like a mantle, a ledge that's in front of a window. Talking about that the window is to a house, maybe an attic or something, and outside the window is Rosh Hashanah. Inside is the house. Nice nalav v'nitlam b'Shabbos. The people that live in by that upper floor, they can put things on the ledge and they can take it in. It's probably flower pots and stuff. What would you put on a ledge out there? Okay. The Gemara asks, "Hi ziz the mapik lahecha." Where's this ledge hanging out to? Ilem the mapik l'Rosh Hashanah. If it's hanging out to the Rosh Hashanah, let's suspect that maybe the items that you put there is going to fall. It's a problem. It's your window ledge. No, our problem isn't that the ledge is the Rosh Hashanah. The ledge is sticking out to the Rosh Hashanah. Ellie. So, yeah, the problem is that we're concerned that things might fall, and you'll be tempted to go down and bring them back up. There's a gzeira. There's a gzeira that if it falls, you may end up going to get it. If you should not be allowed to. If you shouldn't be allowed to let things hang over Rosh Hashanah that could fall, you might end up going downstairs to pick it up. Right. Yeah, maybe. So.
Could it be a fire escape?
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. So we say like this. Ela demapik l'Rosh Hashanah. What do you want to say? It's not sticking over Rosh Hashanah, it's sticking over Rosh Hashanah, which means it's sticking over the courtyard. The Gemara says, Pshita. That is obvious that you're allowed to use the ledge. That I don't need a Mishnah to tell me. I'm allowed to carry from my house to my courtyard. That's not a question. Maybe Eiruvin something. I don't know. Amar Abaya says, Leilam demapik l'Rosh Hashanah. Really, it's sticking out over the Rosh Hashanah. My nice and love diktani, kelam and ashparim. A very interesting teretz, saying that the only things you're allowed to put out on it are things that if they would fall off, they would shatter. That way, I have no chash that you may end up going down to pick it up because you're not going to go down to get it. Maybe it's dangerous out down there. Yes, people had broken pots on the floor. Tanya Namiachi, we have a brisa that fits with this. Ziz shalifnei chalain. If there is a ledge that's sticking out of a window or in front of a window, it's going into the Rosh Hashanah. Nice and love karas, kaisis, kitainis, tzleiches. You're allowed to put on it plates, cups, pitchers, and other pitchers. Mishtamish b'chol kaisel ad asara. You're allowed to use. Let's say the ledge is going along the wall, and here's the window, and the ledge is going across. You're allowed to use the whole ledge until it's within 10 tfachim of the ground. Hadasar tachtainim. Because that's already considered Rosh Hashanah. It's on there. If there's a second ziz that's underneath this ziz, another ledge, mishtamish bay, you can use that. However, but the upper one you can only use next to the window. It's very odd because why would anything interfere with the usage of a ledge? It's because there's one under. What's going on over here? Hi ziz hechidami. What are you saying? I can only use it in front of the window. Ida lespe arba makam turu. Okay, we have to look at Rashi. Over here, we're saying if the ledge doesn't have a 4x4 area, it's above 10 tfachim, but it's not 4x4, it's a makam tur. Now, we always learned that a makam tur is not a problem. You can take from a makam tur, from Rosh Hashanah, and put it into and put it into Rosh Hashanah. I'm sorry, from a Makam Tur into Rosh Hashanah, from a Rosh Yachid to a Makam Tur and back, as long as you didn't switch, right? Remember we said as long as you don't switch. We said Amud that was 10 Tvachim high, but wasn't 4 Tvachim, was considered a Makam Tur in Yikatif Alav. You're allowed to put your bags on it, rest your things on it, and it wasn't a problem. And over here we're saying, if the window sill is under 4 Tvachim, then it's Aser. Why is it Aser? It's a Makam Tur. So Rashi over here explains that the Makam Tur that we spoke about, that it was in Rosh Hashanah, that was only Yikatif Alav, that was only to rest temporarily. But over here we're dealing with Tashmishay Tader. In Tashmishay Tader, something that's always used, then for a Makam Tur it's Aser. This we didn't come across before, I don't think.
When we learned about creating a box so one could draw water from the river or the ocean.
Right.
Wasn't the point that was a Makom Patur?
I think that was creating a Rosh Yachid, because that was a box, that was a fence, which was 4x4. Here we're dealing with a ledge that's under 4x4, which doesn't have its own Rishus. And if you look in the Rashi Idl Esbar Ba Makam Turhu says Miu Tashmish Tader Le Mishteri Bay. And what's the concern, Tashmish Tader? Because kalim may fall and you may end up bringing it up. You said that you're only talking about kalim that break, kalim that shatter. Are you looking for an English word? Use this one. So he says, yeah. Hani mili b'dis beidalet. That's only if it's 4x4, where we're not concerned that things are really going to fall. But over here, when it's less than 4x4, then it is a real concern that things are going to fall. So then it's more of an issue. And so we're asking that if the ledge is not 4x4 tfachim, it should be entirely aser. And if it is 4x4, then why can you only use in front of the window, the ledge? You should be able to use across the whole wall. There's a picture in here. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. Whoops. You see a ledge over there? So, yeah, there's a ledge there. Anyone see that ledge? There's a ledge sticking out of the window that's less than 4x4. And then the lower one, we said that you can use as long as it's not within 10 tefachim of the ground. So,
Rabbi, that's the same background I've been using. It's easy to see.
Very good. Very good. Okay, I don't see all the backgrounds now because on the phone it doesn't. I have the computer open, but nothing's working on it. Okay.
See what you're missing?
Yeah. I missed the background. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the Gemara says like this. So we must be talking about arba, that there is 4x4. The yisbe arba, but you could use the whole. You could use the whole wall. Why only in front of the window? Where it says Amrabaya tachten this be'arba ve'alyan las be'arba v'chalein mashlimta ledalet. Keneged chalein mishtamish t'chayr chaleinu the haygisa. Here's a simple teretz. Just setting up the scenario. The bottom one is 4x4 tefachim longer, protruding from the wall. So if it's 4x4 tefachim, so then you're allowed to use that. Like we said, things could fall down. He said, no, we're talking about using it for kelim and shparim, that if they fall down, they'll shatter. What about the upper one? The upper one is not 4x4 tefachim, but so you shouldn't be allowed to use it at all. He said, no, I'm allowed to use it because only in front of the window, because in front of the window completes it to 4x4. So once you go to the side, then I don't have the window ledge itself. So I don't have 4x4. Just setting up the scenario. Okay. You have a new Mishnah. I'm another B'shus Yachid and Metaltal B'shus Rabbim. B'shus Rabbim Metaltal B'shus Yachid. B'vachli Yitzchak Chutz Mi'arba Amas. A person is allowed to stand in his private domain, stick his hands into a public domain, and move things from one place to another place, as long as he doesn't move it more than 4 amas. And the same as in Rosh Hashanah, he can stand in Rosh Hashanah and move things in Rosh Hashanah. I don't know why it says maybe because he's going to need to walk. He's going to need to walk. That may be an issue if he's going to be carrying. I'm not sure. Okay. The chiddush of the Mishnah is that we don't have a concern. We don't make a gzeira that you may pull the item over to your rishus because you were allowed to touch it. You're allowed to move things around, and we say that it's going to remain in the rishus harabim, even though you're standing in the rishus hayachid. We don't have that concern that you're going to pull it to yourself. It's no gzeira. Yeah.
Most common that person always pulls himself regardless.
Right. It's a machlaikas, and this mission is following the other opinion. Person shouldn't stand in a rishus hayachid and urinate into rishus harabim. The rishus harabim v'yashtem rishus hayachid are the opposite. Shouldn't stand in rishus harabim and urinate into a rishus hayachid. That's considered crossing the domain, carrying from one domain to another. And the same as with spitting. Shouldn't spit from a rishus hayachid into rishus harabim, or the opposite. Rabbi Yehuda says that even once the spittle, the saliva, is collected in his mouth, that means like he's ready to spit it out, he shouldn't walk dalet amas until he spits it out. Okay, we have people teaching Chiyah Barav in front of Rav all the time. Chiyah Barashi, it's teaching Chiyah Barav. Rav's son, Chiyah. Kamei Rav, and Rav is standing there, and the way he teaches him, he says, he tells him exactly the opposite of our Mishnah. He says, don't stand in a Rishus HaYachid and move things around in a Rishus HaRabim. Don't do that. Amalei, Rav tells him, Shavkas Rabbanan Vavdiska Rab Meir. We're going to have a Mishnah later on where Rab Meir says, like Moshe said, that there is a Gezeira, that you're not allowed to move things around. You may end up pulling it to yourself. He says, why are you leaving the Rabbanan, which is our Mishnah, and you're going like Rab Meir, which is a Mishnah later on? But Rav Chinna Bar Shalmei, we're on top of Tzadik Tesna, 99. He says, me the Sefer Rab Meir, Reishinami Rab Meir, because the later Mishnah, we call that the Sefer, is Rab Meir, so he thinks that the first part of the Mishnah is also Rab Meir. V'lahi, Sefer Rab Meir, Reish Rabban. It's not so. This Mishnah says that you're allowed to. Later on, we're going to have an opinion of Rab Meir that says you're not allowed to. As long as you don't move it more than 4 amas. Let's say he does move it more than 4 amas. Then Chayiv Chatas. Sounds like he's Chayiv Chatas. Now, there's an assumption being made here. The assumption is that the item was not on the ground in the Rishus HaRabim, or maybe it was on the ground, but we're talking about where he moves it from the way he would carry anything normally. He lifts it up and he moves it over like that. So we're thinking from the ground or from under 10 from the Rishus HaRabim, but he lifts it up above 10 tefachim and then he puts it down. So we're going to ask, this seems to be a support for Rava, what you're saying, that you chayav chatas if you move it more than 4 amas. If someone carries 4 amas in Rishus HaRabim and he lifts it over his head, which is over 10 tefachim, he's still chayav. You see, what he did was he did an akira in a Rishus HaRabim. He did anach in Rishus HaRabim,
but the movement of the 4 amas was not in the Rishus Harabim. That was in the Makam Tur. That was over his head. Rava says he's still chayiv. Akira in Rishus Harabim, Anach in Rishus Harabim, 4 amas away, it is chayiv. So it's a support to Rava, what you're saying here, that he's chayiv chatas if he moves it more than 4 amas. The Gemara says, Miktaniim haitzi chayiv chatas. The Mishnah doesn't say chayiv chatas. Mishnah just says that you're not supposed to do it less than that. You're not supposed to do it that amount, but less than that you can. What happens if you do it that amount? Dilma im haitzi pater avalasser. Maybe you're exempt. Just says don't do it. Ikadamri, there are those that say it the opposite. Ha haitzi pater avalasser. It says that you shouldn't do it, but if you do it, what's going to be the din? You're going to be exempt. We say it the opposite. Now this is a strong kasha on Rava. Rava says that you're going to be chayev, and here we say that you're pater if you move it 4 amas without taking it straight through the Rishus Harabim. If you lift it over and then put it back down. Miktani haitzi pater avalasser. Does it say that you're pater avalasser? Dilma yemaitzi chayev chatas. You pull it either way, whichever way you want. But whatever way you do it, you can't hold it against Rava because you can only say it's it's not a support, it's not a kasha. Okay, layamid adam rishus hayachid chulo. You said that a person can't stand in a rishus hayachid and urinate in a rishus harabim, or the opposite. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Hishtin v'rak chayiv chatas. If someone does urinate or does spit across the border between rishus hayachid and rishus harabim, he has to bring korban chatas. It's a biblical violation. Gemara says, "Vabina nakira v'anachmi al gabi makim daled v'leka." Whenever you do a violation of carrying on Shabbos, it always has to be an akira. You have to uproot it from the ground, and you have to place it on the ground. Now, when you say you have to uproot it, it has to be uprooted from an area that is 4 by 4 tefachim. That has to be a considerable area. If it's not, yeah, that's a good question. He's asking if he spits over 10 tefachim, and naturally the spit would be over 10 tefachim. Yeah, if he's taller than 10 tefachim. So I think we consider it really that the akira is considered from his feet, that is, it's considered on the ground. That's what we learned to Masechta Shabbos. Otherwise, it would never have an akira. Whenever you carry something in your pocket, if it's in the air, but when he spits it out, he's spitting it out, and you're saying because it's over 10 tefachim, right? Right. Maybe that's the Gemara's question. The Gemara is asking here that it's not coming from an area of Dalet al Dalet. I have to go back into the beginning of Masechta Shabbos. I have to look that up. The Gemara's question over here, is a little different. The Gemara's question over here is that you're not uprooting it from an area of Dalet al Dalet. You're just uprooting it from your mouth, the spit, or the urine is coming from his private areas. It's not Dalet al Dalet. So the Gemara says, Machshavti mashvalei makin. The fact that he wants to take it out, it's considered like a chashav area, and it's considered uprooted. Now, what we're saying over here is that it's not just machshava changes everything. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that the machshava and that he wants to remove it from his mouth, that's what makes it considered that area a considerable makom chashav. If you don't say that, this is Rava says, Rava said that if you throw some sort of food and it ends up landing in the dog's mouth, that's what people they would throw, catch, or it ends up going into the furnace. So then, even if that's not a makim daled, which the the dog's mouth isn't a makam dala, but because that's what he intended for it to land, so that's considered a makam chashav. So it doesn't always need to be a makam dalet al dalet. It's enough if it's considered chashav because that's what he intended. Boy Rava has an interesting question. Who b'shas yachid u'piyama b'shas rabim? Mahu basar kirozin or basar yitziazin teku? First question here: do we follow the person's bladder, or do we follow the person where the exit is, where it emitted from? So the fact is, the person is standing in a Rosh Hashanah. The person is standing in a Rosh Hashanah. Makes more sense, standing inside the house. And the piyama, where it's emitting from, is outside the window. So do we say that it's considered coming from his bladder, which is inside the house? Do we say it's coming from where it exits? And it's, well, the whole thing was Rosh Hashanah. Teku. Let it stay as a question. Okay. Same as with spit. Rabbi Yehuda says that you can't walk around with spit in your mouth more than 4 amas in Rosh Hashanah. Even if he didn't start to turn it over means that his mom is ready to spit it out. But there was a Mishnah. Rab Meir mitame, Rab Yosi mitar, Rab Yehuda hifach patame leipach patar. The Mishnah is like this: someone has in his mouth a fig, and the fig was never wet, so the person's tummy. But the fig isn't tummy because only food that gets wet becomes tummy. Right, so what's happening here is he puts it in his mouth, and of course it gets wet in his mouth. Right? It gets mukhshir, becomes susceptible to tum in his mouth because of the spit. So Reb Meir says what happens now is he puts his finger in his mouth to take out a pebble in the fig or something, a piece of dirt. So he's taking it out. So when he's doing that, he's touching the fig, the wet fig. So Reb Meir says it becomes tummy. Reb Yosi says it's tar. Why does Reb Yosi say it's tar? He says, Rabbi Yosi says that as long as the spit is in his mouth, it's not considered mashke, it's considered in his body. It doesn't make it susceptible. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends. If he turned over the spit in his mouth, ready to spit it out, then it's considered mashke. And then the fig becomes tameh because he touched the fig that was wet. But if the saliva is still in his mouth, then he didn't turn it over, so then it's considered part of his body and it's not considered separated. So what are we saying over here? That you're not allowed to walk 4 amas with spit in your mouth. But that sounds like only if he turned it over, ready to spit it out. We didn't say that. Rabbi Yochanan says we have to adjust this Mishnah that we just said with different shitas of Reb Meir and Reb Yosi and Reb Yehuda. You have to say that really Reb Yehuda holds that it's going to always be tamei. Whenever he puts his finger into his mouth, once it touches the saliva, it's going to make him tamei. Not like we have over here, that it depends if he turned over the saliva or not. You don't have to turn over the shitas and say that Reb Yehuda says that he's always tamei. We can say there's a difference between saliva or phlegm. Phlegm is considered something that's separated, and not if it's just saliva. But Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, we have a brisa that says kichai v'netlash, that a person shouldn't walk 4 amas if he has the phlegm that's separated from his mouth. That means that he turned it over. My love, is it not? Reik v'netlash. Oh. Uh-huh. So we have a problem here because we're saying Yichai v'netlash. We're not talking about that he turned it over. We're talking about that the phlegm, you need to spit it out automatically. The phlegm that's in his mouth, he always needs to spit it out. We assume that means reik v'netlash, that the reik that's at the spit that's in his mouth, he also needs to spit it out right away. The Gemara says like kichai v'netlash. Specifically, only the phlegm he needs to spit out, but not the spit, unless according to Rabbi Yehuda you turned it over or whatever. But Tanya, but we have another brayso, Rabbi Yehuda kichai shenetlash v'chein reik shenetlash le'alach dalam sad shiarok. They're both the same. So how you give me an answer that says that is talking about the phlegm, or by us we're talking about the phlegm. That's the problem. But in that Mishnah it's just talking about spit, and that's why it depends if he turned it over or not. It's exactly the same. We have to say the way Rabbi Yochanan said it, that we have to turn around the shittas, and Rabbi Yehuda it's always considered separated. Okay.
Why would it matter whether it's one or the other? Tiltal is still tiltal. Is consistency? I mean, what's the issue?
Yeah, something like that. We're asking, is it considered part of the body, or is it considered separated from the body? So Rabbi Yehuda was saying that once the phlegm is in his mouth, or once the spit is in his mouth, then he needs to spit it out. He can't walk 4 amas. But we're making a difference here we try to make a difference between phlegm and spit. Turns out that we can't make that difference. And there really is no difference according to Rabbi Yehuda. You have to spit it out always.
Makes sense. All right, thanks.
Amarish Lakish, Kiach b'fnei Rabbi chayiv misa. Someone spits in front of his teacher, he's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. Shenemar kol mesanai avu maves. All those that hate me love death. All my enemies love death. Al tikri lemesanai el masniyai. All those who make themselves hateful. So he spits it out, spitting, phlegm. Oh, yeah, maybe it means coughing it up. So the Gemara says, "V'meina sanis." How is he? But it comes from an illness or something or whatever it is. If he has the phlegm in his throat, he has to cough it up. So why is he getting a chiyuv misa? He can't control it. When it says kiyach v'rakam, we're talking about that he spit it out. That's where it becomes a problem. He should have gone to the side or gone somewhere else to spit it out. Okay. Person shouldn't stand in a Rishus HaYachid and drink water in a Rishus HaRabim. Means just to put his head in. Shouldn't put his head outside. Or Rishus HaRabim used to Rishus HaYachid. We do this in the sukkah. In a Rishus HaRabim and drink in a Rishus HaYachid. This would be more common. Someone's outside and it's
what about those little public bathrooms that they put up, those little blue ones? They're probably not big enough to be considered necessarily a Rishus. That's interesting.
Are you going back on the Mashtin? On the
You just mentioned Mashtin again, no?
No, this is to drink. This is Yishta.
Yishta. I thought you said Mashtin. I was like wondering why you were going back to that. Okay.
So this is to drink. Unless he puts in most of his body into the area that he's drinking, because there's a concern that you may end up taking the utensil back with you. Like we discussed before, that there's an opinion of Reb Meir that has this concern, a gezerah. But here it's more common that you should do that. While you're drinking, you're going to end up with the vessel. Reisha Rabbanan v'Sefer Reb Meir. Is this following? I didn't explain B'chein B'gas. We'll see in a minute. B'chein B'gas. Gas means a press. We'll see what it's talking about. Reisha Rabbanan v'Sefer Reb Meir. is the beginning Rabbanan that says we don't make a gzeira, and over here it's Reb Meir. Rabbi Yosef b'chafesin tzitchich le'v'divrei hakol. It doesn't have to be Reb Meir. It could really be the Rabbanan as well. Here we're talking about that there's a utensil that you're using to drink from, and the Rabbanan make a gzeira that he may end up with the utensil back in his rishus that he's drinking from. Iboilu, Carmelis Mai. What if you're in a Carmelis? Can you drink in a Rishus HaYachid? You're standing in a Carmelis. Can you put your head in without putting your whole body in? A majority of your body. Amar Abaya, Abaya says the same thing. Amar Rava, Gzeira, Gufa Gzeira, Vanan Nekem V'Nigzer Gzeira Gzeira. What's a Carmelis? Carmelis is something that looks like a Rishus HaRabim because it's open, or it's not, but it's not really a Rishus HaRabim. It's only a gzeira. So what are you doing over here? You're not taking the water into the Rishus HaRabim. You're drinking it in the Rishus HaYachid. Your head is in the Rishus. Your head is in the Rishus HaYachid, or your head is in the Carmelis, whichever way you want to put it. But it's not. Even if you end up doing what they don't want you to do, which means bringing it all back over to your area, it's still only a rabbinic decree. So we're going to tell you that you're not allowed to do this because we're going to make a decree that you might violate a decree. It's called a gzeira l'gzeira, that we don't do. Amar Abaye mina aminala. Where do I know this from? I didn't say. Abaye says that it's aser. Rava said it's a gzeira l'gzeira. We don't have to go so strict. Abaye says, where do I know that it's aser? Midiktani. It says v'chein begas. It says you're not allowed to drink over a gas, which is a pit for that they squish the grapes in. I don't know. Oh, that was an area. That was the name of a place, right? Oh, because that was a wine press? Oh. So, and we're assuming here that the gas is a Carmelis. So you see, I have a support. Rava says, Rava Amar Linyan Meiser. That's not talking about an issue of Shabbos. That's talking about an issue of taking Meiser. There's a rule that you're allowed to eat temporarily from food that Meiser wasn't taken from. What would be temporarily? If you're in the wine press and you're drinking it from the wine press, it's not that you bottled it and you took it out. That would be kavua. That would be already that you're established eating. But while you're doing the work, while you're there, that's just considered a sip. That's considered temporary. It's linin meiser. V'chein gas linin meiser. The Tanana was taught like this: sheisin ala gas. You're allowed to drink before the meiser is taken from the wine. You're allowed to drink over the wine press. Bein bechamen, bein betzainen, upater. Whether it's they would mix the wine with water. Whether it's hot water or cold water, you're allowed to drink, and you're exempt from taking meiser. Divrei Reb Meir, Reb Elazar bar Tzadok mechayev. Reb Elazar bar Tzadok says that you can't. Once you're mixing it, he holds that it's considered already a real drink. The Chum say, if you mix it with hot water, then you're not going to pour it back in. So because it's already ruined, you have to finish drinking it. So then you can't drink. Then that's considered kavua. But if you mixed it with cold water, you can still pour it back into the press. That's considered aray, and you're allowed to drink it. So this is Rava's opinion that says there is no support that says that you can't drink in a Carmelis or Rishus HaYachid. No, the issue isn't that it becomes chayav and ma'aser. The issue is, would you end up pouring it back in? Is it considered that you mamish took it out and now you're like saving it? That's considered achilas keva. Or is it considered that you just took a little sip, like to taste it, just to see what's going on, but it's not a real drinking? So if you mixed it with cold water, so then it's just a taste. They call it in the ice cream places, they give you a taste. Okay, well, let's leave it over here by this Mishnah Tzadik Tes.